Hey everybody, we are back here with another episode of Here the Big Big Podcast. As you can see by the background, it's Nebraska time for us. A new rule era in Nebraska coming to Lincoln here and Memorial Stadium. What do you guys expect here from Matt Rule with his first year here in Nebraska?
Ooh, that's a good question.
Not a lot.
Slow start.
Ah, yes, yeah.
I
He's got
was
some pieces parts, but it's going to be kind of touch and go.
absolutely. I mean, I was just taking a look here at like the recruiting now. He didn't have a lot of time to recruit. A lot of guys. With getting in there like typically after bowl season. They ranked 31st in the nation. And they did have some transfers come in. Their composite rank, with transfers and recruits coming in, brings them up to 25th. Um,
He did
let's
good on the transfer market. He did
Yes,
good on
sir.
the transfer market.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. They ranked actually fifth in the Big Ten. Um, you know, right behind Michigan State, Michigan, Penn State, and Ohio State, respectively. So I mean, they're right there in the top five. A lot better than another guy who's in his first year as a head coach at a Big Ten program, Luke Fickle at Wisconsin, finishing down there at 12th. So what do you guys think about here about Nebraska?
Ooh, well, I mean, enter Matt Rule, right?
Right.
That's the big story. Was at Baylor from 17 to 19, went to the NFL for a few years. Was at Temple before Baylor. He was one game under 500 at Baylor and 1-3 in bowl games overall. He only ever beat Vandy, but he did go from 1-11 to 11-3 in 2 years. And he was a field goal loss to OU away from a 12-0 regular season in 2019. So, I mean, he can do it, but it's not going to be overnight. It's not going to happen this year. So, I mean, he great transfer portal. They've got three guys from Georgia in, three guys from Florida in. Um, they got Jeff Sims out of Georgia Tech, Eric Gilbert at tight end, and then Billy Kemp at wide receiver. Huge gain. Ben Scott, Corey Collier, MJ Sherman, they're all going to start. I mean, he went out and he got plug and play guys.
Yes.
Um, Most notably, obviously, Jeff Sims and Billy Kemp. They did lose a couple at the QB. Casey Thompson transferred out, last year's quarterback, to FAU. Ernest Hausman went to UM up in Michigan. RB2, AJ Allen went to the U. And then most unfortunate transfer being Dakotas Crawford went to LA Tech. I mean, that's just a great name. So he transferred out, and I didn't know that until I looked at
Yeah.
this. So that's just kind of my first half of stuff here.
It's just to me, it's a culture thing. I mean, he's got to instill his own culture to build Nebraska to what he visions it to be. It's not going to be an overnight process, no matter who you bring in. I like the Sims kid from bringing him in with the running dual quarterback action, so I think that's going to help a little bit.
And that's what Matt Rule
But
likes. You know,
yeah,
he likes that
that's
dual
the kind of
threat.
offense. Yeah, when I think it feels like when you watch a Nebraska football game when they play a big game, it feels like if they're in the game at halftime, it feels like that they're in it. And other times when they're down two, three scores the last couple of years, it just feels like it's like they don't even try anymore.
Right.
Feels like
Right.
there's no, you know, coaching.
Right.
So
Yeah.
you definitely feel like Matt Rule will bring, and I mean, again, it's Nebraska. I mean, Nebraska was really good back when they were in the Big 12. But I mean, it feels like they should just win the games that they should win, and that'll be solid enough in the Big Ten and be better than probably half of the conference.
Right. Right. Drew,
Yeah, that's fair.
I know you're wearing the other
Yeah.
team we're talking later on here today because it is Penn State Nebraska time. But your thoughts on what Matt Rule is going to bring to Nebraska?
Yeah. Well, like you guys said, it's not going to be a change overnight. I think the Scott Frost era was a nightmare for Nebraska. And so it's going to take some time to recoup, rejuvenate that locker room. I love what he did in the transfer portal. He
Absolutely.
brought in a lot of youngsters. Even though he missed so much recruiting, he did bring in a pretty solid recruiting class.
Hmm.
Um, I think the offense looks better, takes a step forward. I think the defense looks about the same as last year. Um, I like the running game a lot. Jeff Sims, big fan. The two running backs, I think Anthony Grant is a little underrated. He's a very solid running back, and Gabe Irvin to back him up is very good. I think Nebraska's rushing attack should be pretty nice. Uh,
Absolutely. Um, I just want to touch on one thing here that Corey said, like you got to change the culture. And like part of that is you got to learn to win, right? Like a lot of these guys on the Nebraska team haven't experienced winning very often.
Yeah.
So that's like a big thing when you're Matt Rule. You got to go in there and you got to change these kids' mindsets that anytime we step on that field, we're winning that game.
Yeah,
You know,
last what 4 or 5 years, 4-8, 3-9, 3-5, 5-7, 4-8. It's
right.
not Nebraska football.
No, not at all. And I mean, it's not even, and you got to change that mindset. And by doing that, you got to produce on the field, is the way to change that mindset. And it's a hard thing to do because you got to get kids bought in to your system, and you're telling them, hey, my system's gonna work, my system's gonna take us to the top, right? um and then you have, and then on the other side you have the kids who are saying, well, that's what Scott Frost told me. you know that's what
Yeah,
I mean, that's what Scott Frost told
mm-hmm.
me. I got a good system, you're perfect for it, we're gonna win football games with you here. I mean, that's what Scott Frost told them. So it's kind of hard for them to then turn that around, hearing that again for a second coach and be like, okay, well, is this guy blowing smoke up our ass? Essentially.
right.
So, but however, though, I do think Matt Rule has an edge up on Scott Frost where he does have a tenure of turning the programs around. I mean, I was taking a look at what Baylor was like before him under Art Briles. Obviously, they had a lot of stuff go on there, controversies there, but when you really look at like the Scott Briles era, or the Matt Rule era, Scott Briles, Scott Frost, and Briles, but when you look at this Matt Rule era, he's gonna have to of Baylor. They were a top 10 team. He turned them around and put them in the top 10, and now they've stayed kind of in that top 10. I mean, I know they finished the top 10 a couple years ago. So like they've almost maintained that, hey, we have this is our potential, right?
Right.
If everybody puts
Yeah.
in the
Mm-hmm.
work, our potential is being a top 10 team. So I think, can he do that at Nebraska? Sure. But it's going to be one hell of an uphill battle for him to do it at there.
And they also, I mean, looking at Baylor going to Dave Aranda, they got pretty good luck going straight from Rule to Aranda.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they got a great catch going through that. My biggest question mark is Jeff Sims comes in with that seniority, the history. He's played 25 games. Is he going to be a step up at quarterback? Is he just coming in to coach these kids? I know he's going to be a dynamic player. He's going to be a two-way pass rush guy, just like he was at Georgia Tech. But he's only his best win was Week 4 against UNC in 2021, and Week 5 2022 against Pitt. And then he got smoked 73-7 by number one Clemson and was held to 58 total yards one year. So
Right.
I just hope that Jeff Sims can take that progression step forward. I hope that Rule can get the best out of him because this offense was the 102nd ranked scoring offense last year. 102nd yards for, total yards, 100th in rushing yards for, and 82nd in passing yards for. So they've got a huge step up to be able to compete with the top 30, 40 programs in the nation.
I mean, it's one of those things where it's like, I think their fans are kind of ready for something good to happen at Nebraska. They've been waiting a long time. And so it just feels it feels like he's on the hot seat, even though it's year one. It feels like he's on the hot seat because they've been bad for so long. They expect results, and it just doesn't feel like it's going to come like that. I think it's just Big Ten ball is different, and I mean they have the stable running backs to be able to run the ball,
Right.
but it's not going to be, it's you you don't just automatically become really, really good overnight. It doesn't really happen like that. Especially, I mean, in rare cases, I guess you could make an argument that it does happen, but I mean,
Right.
at a school like Nebraska, unless you get someone who has won national titles and taken teams to back conference championships and things like that, it feels like he's just, I mean, it's to me the biggest question mark with him is going from college to the NFL is one thing, but then coming back to college is a completely different mindset you have to have. You have to mold these players into what you want them to be, opposed to just being a babysitter and dealing with the different personalities in an NFL locker room.
Absolutely.
So I mean,
Right.
to me, year one is all about the culture. You win loss record is what it is. And
Right.
it's all about, hey, this is how things are going to be. This is not what you're used to. This is how it's going to be. You better get used to it or go somewhere else.
Right.
So, I mean, he got a good transfer class. He's got a decent recruiting class for Nebraska for better than what you'd expect. So, I mean, it's just about, I mean, to me, it's not for his expectations this year. It's really not that high. It's just be better than Scott Frost. Don't win 2 games.
Yeah. And you've seen that what Harbaugh and Saban did at the next level and then coming back and what they're producing now. I mean, I'm sure there's stuff you pick up at the next level that you can bring to college to retool some of these kids that have egos that are larger than life.
Also, a recruiting aspect too. You can use that as a recruiting tool as well.
Right.
It is a big recruiting tool when you've coached in the NFL. Because that's where everybody wants to be, right?
Yeah.
You know?
Exactly. That's the goal.
Mhm.
That is
Yeah.
end game 1. Circled on the whiteboard for the last 15 years of your life. That's where you want to go.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's end game, and winning a
Yeah.
Super Bowl is that. And I think Matt Rule here in his new tenure, or his tenure at this new program, um, I don't think you can expect much year one from him. Like, I don't think he's going to take you to Indy year one. I don't, or the playoff year one, obviously. But I mean, by year like 4 or 5, he's going to have a good program. And maybe even by year 3, he'll have a good program. But definitely year 4 and 5, when he gets, a lot of his guys into the program through recruiting, they're going to have a good program.
Yeah. He can build it. He can do that.
Yeah. I think he's definitely going to be better than Scott Frost at building a program.
Well, and the landscape of college football is going to be completely different in 2 or 3 years anyway. So
Right.
really, to be honest, elite coaches won't stand out as much in college football until you get to the last 3 or 4 games of the season. So, I mean, to be honest, if he can produce and get players in that run his system to perfection and run, even if they have to go through Michigan and Ohio State one year in the same time, even still, it feels like where college football is going, if you have 2 losses, maybe even 3 losses, you could still be considered to be in the playoff.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
I mean, if you're talking that, I'm just going to tell you right now, there's one of these years, and after this upcoming football season, you're going to have a 3-loss SEC team in the top 12 in the playoff, or not SEC champion, but an SEC team. A 3-loss SEC team will make the playoff.
Yeah.
I mean,
They've
it's just what
proven that they
happened.
can hang.
Right.
Yeah.
Probably rightfully so.
I mean,
Yeah.
a 3-loss Big Ten team probably would too.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Potentially, Yeah.
I mean, you have USC in there, so I mean, it's one of those things where, again, it's Nebraska is not going to catch every single, every single year. The thing is, for me, is they have to bring back the home field advantage. Going to Nebraska, let's be honest, going to Nebraska is not difficult. It feels, it used to be difficult. It used to be rocking and loud, and now you go in there and you just steamroll them. So he needs to. I mean, again, you're not going to beat every single team that you play, especially the better teams that are already more well-rounded than you are. But you can at least play hard and be competitive in the game.
Absolutely. And
Right.
what I think is going to help Matt Rule too, is he has a connection down in Texas, Oklahoma, that, true Great Plain area. Because when he was at Baylor, that's, you're recruiting, you have to recruit your state, which is Texas, and you're competing against Texas, Texas A&M, TCU, during, regardless if they're good or not, there's still programs that kids strive to go to in that state. You're competing against Oklahoma because Oklahoma wants to come in there and take those kids away from University of Texas. So when you have that type of pipeline or those connections that Matt Rule has, especially in Texas, of all places for high school football, you can't, you're going to recruit pretty well and at a decently high level, I would say, in my opinion. And I think that's going to be important as him reestablishing that pipeline into like the Oklahoma, Texas area, seeing if he can, reestablish himself back down in that area to pull some, potentially, and maybe even steal recruits. Like, he can say, look, I can give you the same production here that, Jim Harbaugh or Ryan Day or James Franklin are going to give you, and you don't have to travel nearly as far. You could stay here and your parents are right here, all that stuff. You're still making NIL money, so there's a lot of like, yeah, it's warmer. I mean, you get a lot of, I mean, besides it's the middle of flipping nowhere, but outside of that, I mean, you got a lot of, no, but I'm just saying that he still has a lot of pitching power, convincing them of, hey, guys, coming here is better for you than maybe going to Michigan, Ohio State, or Penn State.
Right? I mean, he almost landed Dylan Raiola.
Well, that's wasn't his uncle.
Legacy.
Isn't
his dad? His dad.
Yeah, his dad. It's his dad or his uncle is a coach at Nebraska, I think.
I think his dad played there too, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But still, I mean, that's a guy that if you would have landed and brought in, that changes your whole landscape of everything at Nebraska.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, you're instantly flipping people too.
Right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's like and he's the number one overall prospect and supposedly the best player that we've seen in a while. So it's one of those things where it's like, you could land maybe a guy, if you could find a guy similar to that, like that you could bring in, that's going to recruit and bring in guys that's going to work with him. It's, that makes a difference.
Yeah, 100%.
All right. I'm looking at just, the Cornhusker schedule this year. Some of these games we've touched on because we've obviously covered the other teams throughout the Big Ten. So they start the season with 2 away games, Minnesota and Colorado respectively. Then they host Northern Illinois, Louisiana Tech, Michigan. They travel to Champaign to face the Fighting Illini. Then they host Northwestern, host Purdue. Then they travel to East Lansing to face Sparty, host Maryland, travel to Madison to face the Badgers, and then they host the Hawkeyes in rivalry weekend there in November. There's one game that I'm circling on here that I really, really want to watch, and that's September 9th, 12 p.m. Fox, Coach Prime versus Matt Rule, baby. I'm ready to see that matchup.
It's going to be fantastic.
Yeah.
Looking at this schedule, interesting. They get 3 weekday games: Thursday, Friday, Friday. They get both Northwestern and Purdue off of a bye, which they get Northwestern off of their bye also, so they're on this. So they go from October 6th to October 21st without a football game. So that could be interesting.
So they get
There's 25.
that's a
Yep.
15-day layoff.
Well, they play
Yeah,
on
they
Thursday
they
or
get
Friday.
Minnesota to Iowa. They play.
Oh, so
Oh,
they
you're
play
talking about
on a Friday night and then they
so
get their bye week.
yeah,
Yeah.
but they're
Correct.
at Illinois, so it's not exactly a travel for an away game. At Illinois on a Friday night off, and then host Northwestern 15 days later.
Yeah.
So I mean, yeah, they get at Minnesota on a Thursday, at Illinois on a Friday, and host Iowa on a Friday. They're also 25 and 36 and 2 against Minnesota all time. I don't know. I like this schedule. There are a lot of coin flips on this schedule for me. Only one real clear cut loss.
All right, let's start it off, Ethan. Where do you got Nebraska going this season?
Oh, there's so many coin flips. I sat here and went back and forth with this. Obviously, I have locked in a loss against Michigan, which it just seems the most feasible outcome. I can see them going as good as 9-3, and their floor is about 5-7. I put them at 7-5 is my prediction.
All righty,
Bowl
Drew.
game.
Yeah, I got 5-7 as their floor, 8-4 as their ceiling. I think they lose at Minnesota week 1. Just Minnesota's been playing football together longer. I think they beat Colorado. I don't think Colorado's good. I think the NIU game is going to be interesting. Northern Illinois is quite good, and they return quite a bit from a team 2 years ago that won 10 games. Louisiana Tech is a locked-in win. Michigan's a loss. At Illinois is a toss-up. Northwestern win. Purdue homecoming win. And then I got losses at Wisconsin. The loss to Iowa for the rivalry game. They're going to be on a short week. So I like Nebraska at 5-7.
5-7. All right, Core.
Taking the low end.
Yeah, I don't trust them.
Well, there's so many toss-up games because
Yeah.
you don't know what to expect, right? If Nebraska comes out and plays well, they potentially could beat Minnesota week 1, especially knowing that it's week 1. Minnesota is going to be figuring stuff out. It's just they could potentially win that. I kind of agree with Drew. I'm not sold on Colorado. Colorado had a huge overhaul. Yeah, you bring in Sanders and everybody at quarterback and Travis Hunter, you bring all them in. However, let's not forget that they were playing a division lower last year. So it's not like you're just going to automatically become unbelievable overnight.
Right.
Travis Hunter is the real deal, but again, he was facing guys that were like basically the equivalent of high school for him.
Right.
When he could have been facing
Right.
top tier talent.
Right.
So to me, Colorado, again, that's an early game. Colorado, anything could happen. It's just tough. They could beat Illinois, they could beat Northwestern, they could beat Purdue, they can beat Sparty. I think 5-7. I just don't. I think I'm kind of between 5-7 and 6-6. I think I don't think there's more than 6 wins on the schedule for them. I
So
just
You're going
it's
5-7.
yeah, I'm gonna go
Okay.
5-7.
I think 6-6 is the ultimate cliche with their schedule. I think that with all the coin flips and all this stuff on there, 6-6 would be the most Nebraska season.
Well, I'm being
my
cliche because that's what I see when I'm looking at this. I see 6 wins, 6 losses.
But I think that's good enough for the fan base to make them believe.
Look, I mean, if you go
Year
500 or above in year 1 for Matt Rule, I think you're doing a pretty good job. 500 or above. I
They,
mean,
yeah,
Better than
and
his past 2 stops.
yeah,
His
and
first
they
year at
finished
Temple
what?
2-10. His first year at Baylor 1-11.
yeah, right.
I
This team
mean,
has
and
much
what
more talent.
two
Way more
years
talent.
ago, this Nebraska team was one or two plays away from 11-1. So, I mean, this Nebraska went 3-9 that year. Anything's possible.
Absolutely. But I do have them going 6-6. Guys, let's talk about it. They're one of the teams that everybody is talking about going into the season here. As you can see, I'm about to change it. There it is. Let's put them up. The Penn State Nittany Lions. They finished the 2023 recruiting year with the second best class in the Big Ten, according to 247 Sports. They bring in one 5-star, 12 4-stars, and a dime. Dropped a dime there on the 3 stars with an average rating of 90 for each of their recruits. Um, they got it looks like they got their guy at offensive tackle, Javon Williams. They got King Mack, a great safety out of St. Thomas Aquinas, Fort Lauderdale, Florida, coming in. This It just seems as we get closer to football season, we've crept through this, recruiting period and all this, and it just seems like as much as you want to say all eyes are on Michigan, all eyes are on Kyle McCord and Ohio State, it just seems like no, all eyes are on James Franklin and Penn State. It seems like as much as like, we'll say, you'll hear us say like, this is Harbaugh's year to win the Natty, like this is his best team he's had in college ever, right? It seems like you could say the exact same thing here for James Franklin. Am I wrong?
No, it's pretty cluttered this year at the top of the
Yeah.
East.
I mean, but like this is just, I guess the mantra going into this season has been for Penn State is if they don't make it to Indy and they don't make it to the playoff, it's a failed season.
Which is fair. I mean, looking at everything they've got, they got 8 offensive and defensive starters back, and they only lost 20 lettermen total. They went to a New Year's Six Bowl. They beat Utah in the Rose Bowl.
Yep.
Their only losses were to their big two, Ohio State and Michigan, and they were up on Michigan into the early third quarter and fell apart. But yeah, you were right. The focus is
JTT ran, played a hell of a game in Happy Valley there at Beaver Stadium, and took away their momentum there. But go ahead, Ethan. Sorry.
You're good. I was just gonna say you're right. The focus is run it back, and now or never. I have that as my second bullet point on here. That's your focus. My first one is how does Drew Allar fit in? I think that's going to be a very, very big question. I love this Penn State team. They're loaded all the way around. It's probably overly high on this team. I really think that this team is the real deal. Nick Singleton and Katrin Allen in the backfield, they're going to carry the load. They're going to help Drew Allar stay comfortable. They're going to take the heat off of him in the lighter games or the heavy moments. You lost your all-time leading passer in Sean Clifford. He got drafted to Green Bay in the 5th round. But you've got Keandre Lambert-Smith, and you just took in Dante Cephas from Kent State, who's going to be huge targets. So you've got 2 on the outside, 2 behind you. I mean, all he has to do is manage the games.
Yeah.
He's got to manage the games, and then 2 of my bullet points here: end the streak at the shoe. They haven't won there since 2011. And it's a daytime revenge game against Michigan. They didn't catch the 7 o'clock cap.
Which is surprising.
Yeah, I don't understand. I don't know if I agree with that.
I don't
but
agree
that
with
should
that at
definitely
all.
have been a night game.
It should have
I
been
think
prime
it's
time.
I think it's because Michigan plays a night game the week before.
Yeah,
Who cares?
But I mean,
who cares?
you're
It's going to
bringing
be a top 5 matchup by that point in the season.
Yeah, you're top 7, I'd say, but maybe top
Sorry,
5.
sorry. Let me rephrase. Not top 5, top 10. It's going to be a
There you
top
go.
10 matchup at that point in the season.
Right. And they've got the 10th ranked scoring defense last year. They were in the top 20 in total yards allowed and rushing yards allowed, 46th in passing yards allowed. Defense is fine. They still have 8 guys coming back. And they were 20th ranked in scoring offense, and they were 30s, 40s in their yardage markers there. So all you're doing is plugging and playing a new quarterback and bringing in an all-star receiver from Kent State. You just got to manage it. Franklin can't choke in the 2 biggest games of the year.
Drew, I'm going to go to you here since you're wearing the cap.
Yeah, this year looks awesome. The fact that the national media loves this team so much makes me uneasy. But I mean, they have a right to. The offense is going to hinge on Drew Aller, how well he can game manage. He doesn't have to do too much. They have an incredible running back room. They have an awesome offensive line. They're going to pound the rock. They replaced Parker Washington and Mitchell Tinsley pretty much exact with Dante Cephas and Malik McLean from Florida State. The defense is still sick. My only question mark is the secondary. And I know there's some big names back there like Johnny Dixon and Kalen King, but replacing Jair Brown and Joey Porter might be a little bit tricky. But Franklin's been recruiting at a high level. Franklin is a good developer. I trust James Franklin. I think this team will be very good. I think the schedule works out terrific for them. Big 10 or bust, I think.
Big 10 playoff or bust?
Yeah.
Core?
I think Penn State fans are going to be very upset at the end of the year if they have Big 10 or bust. Y'all have said it. They have a ton of talent. I think Katron Allen is insane. He probably would be a top 3 running back in the Big 10. He still may be a top 3 running back if you didn't have Allen at Wisconsin and Donovan Edwards and probably Blake Corum. And you also have the couple trio at Ohio State too. So I mean, he's insane. Their running back room is one of the best in the country. Their offensive line is insane, one of the best in the country.
Absolutely.
I have no issues with the quarterback. I don't think he'll cause an issue. I don't think anything. To me, it comes down to coaching. Every year when they need something good to happen or they need to make a play or the right play call, it never happens. And it just feels like every time, like you said, they were up against Michigan in the big house and they gave up a long touchdown run on back-to-back plays. Things like that can't happen in big games when you need that to happen after you had already had all the momentum. It just feels like every time Penn State has a legitimate shot with all the talent, they're potentially a national title contender. You know, with all the talent they have, they could potentially win the Big Ten and be in the playoff, 100%. It just, I don't trust James Franklin. I've never thought James Franklin was the guy to do it. I never thought he was. He's a heck of a recruiter. His defense is insane. It's just whenever something happens, James Franklin is the one to try something that they don't need to do, like a 4th down fake punt that doesn't work, or you try to run a reverse, or you try to
run a zone read on 4th and 4, and your zone read is for your quarterback to run straight into Chase Young.
Is that the Trace McSorley play?
Yeah.
Well, and even in the game last year against Ohio State,
Ohio
State had one guy on defense. Literally one guy on defense was the only guy that you couldn't block. And so what did you continue to do? You continued to throw the ball in that direction opposed to rolling out to give him more time. It's little things in the game of football. Now, with that being said, if Penn State runs the ball and can have an offense like similar to how Michigan similar runs their offense, where it's run, open up the pass, they're going to be fine. It's just a matter of every year we talk about how Penn State is the only team that could potentially beat Ohio State and Michigan. And then we talk about how James Franklin loses a game to Nebraska or loses a game to someone that he shouldn't. And to me, that's the biggest thing for Penn State is it's not even so much Michigan and Ohio State because you know those teams are good. And if you lose to those teams, yeah, you're going to take some hit for it, but like you're not going to be favored in those games. It just feels like it's win the games you're supposed to, get to 10 wins and maybe beat one of either Michigan or Ohio State.
Absolutely.
I agree. I think that he's big on over complicating simple things that need to be done. Like you said, the 4th and 4 play, I think it was 4th and 2 another year.
Yeah, it was. Go ahead.
You're making it more difficult than it needs to be. You're overthinking it and you're hurting yourself in the process. Go to what works. Go to the known good.
Yeah. My only question with Penn State will always be is, can James, like Corey was saying, and this is my opinion, can James Franklin get out of his own way? Yeah, that's what's holding Penn State back. It's not their talent. It's not anything else that they're doing. It's literally, can James Franklin get out of his own way? Can he not make a dumbass play call?
Well, and this year, it just feels like let the offensive line do the work for you for offense. Let the offensive line push those guys back and win games in the trenches.
Well, it's not that, but it's like, I guess here's an example, right? During JT Barrett's tenure at Ohio State under Urban Meyer, they had that quarterback zone read where it was a zone read up the middle, and if you could get the linebacker to bite in that gap, you could bounce it outside into your other gap and get more yards, right? But that was a bread and butter play that they had, right? It was just a simple zone read run. Like, Urban, for those 5 years that JT basically started, in any situation 3rd and 4 or shorter, it was either a zone read or he was handing it off to his running back, or it was a JT zone read run. And Corey, Drew, Ethan, I mean, how many times were we all watching a game together and we go, oh, JT's running it up the middle. Oh, JT's running it up the middle here.
And you've got that now. You've got a quarterback that's capable, and you've got Singleton and Allen in the backfield that are just going to, with that offensive line, you don't have to worry about it.
But what I'm saying, though, is Urban never deviated from that play call. Everybody, Drew, we were at that 2016 game, the double overtime game, right?
Mm-hmm.
Everybody in that stadium knew on that 4th down play, JT was running the ball up the middle. Didn't we? Everybody in this, Corey, you knew it, didn't you? That was the play call.
Yeah, he was short.
But flashback to the Super Bowl. Look what they did with Jalen Hurts. 4th and 1, 4th and 2, every time.
Every time.
Well,
and you never deviate from that. And James Franklin in the big games calls some dumbass play, and it's like, dude, you never ran that in that situation before. Why are you doing that now?
Well, I just don't understand, when you run the ball. I mean, I don't watch too many Penn State games. Obviously, I'll be the first one to admit that. But in the few games that I do watch, they hand the ball off on 1st down. You get 6 or 7 yards, and then you go play action pass. What do you go and play action pass for? You just ran the ball for 7 yards. Run it in the same gap, the same way you just did it until they stop you. And if they're not going to stop you, then you're running for 400 yards. It doesn't matter if, you're not always going to get 7 yards, but even if you get 3 or 4 yards on 1st down, anything you can do that's positive, that you can take the pressure off of your quarterback is what's going to be important. You have to know going into fall camp, which is just about to start here. It looks like, I think, next week, at the end of
Yep.
next week, I think it starts for a fall camp. You have to have a few plays that are your bread and butter, like you said, that you can go to and that are going to work. And if they don't involve either of the running backs, there's a problem.
I agree.
yeah.
I absolutely agree on that.
Without fail.
I
Without fail.
just, and that's my, and that should be on every Penn State fan's mind, is will James Franklin make some dumbass decisions throughout this year? I'm a betting man, and I'm gonna bet yes that he probably will, because it
But
doesn't
also
seem like he doesn't learn.
And also at the same time, though, a counterpoint, or I guess counter question, where do you go from James Franklin?
Who do you get that's better?
Fed up with him?
Who do you get that's better?
What's the next step up? Who are you bringing in to replace that?
Joey Porter.
I don't know.
At DC?
I don't know. It's the same question.
You bring someone back who knows Penn State football, who won at Penn State and knows what it takes.
Well,
what would it take for Penn State to fire James Franklin?
A lot.
It would take They'd probably
have to win
seasons.
6 games. They'd have to probably win 6 games this year with all the talent.
But
even still, that might not be enough.
Yeah. Easy as this schedule is, I think an 8-4 season, he'd still get a job next year at Penn State.
He has yet to have a losing season at Penn State in 9 years. Other than 2020, I don't think he's going doesn't count.
I don't think he's going anywhere. He's just. Yeah. I mean,
I don't think he's leaving.
And to be fair, there's no shame, as we talk about this, I'm sure, in a later show at some point. But if you go in and you play Michigan and Ohio State, and those are your only 2 losses, and Michigan and Ohio State are good, chances are you're probably going to be one of the 12 best teams in the country in the playoff anyway.
Absolutely.
So I mean,
you will be.
So there's no shame in going 10-2 after this year.
No,
that's not true, because what does 9-3 brings next few seasons? What does 9-3 bring going forward? Well, we lost to Ohio State, Michigan, and USC. Well, eventually you're gonna have to get over that hump. 9-3 isn't.
You're not wrong.
Playoff spot.
9-3 isn't, but 10-2 definitely is.
Yeah, okay, so you have to beat one of the big 3 now. Now you're a little brother of a 4-man squad.
Well, that's what they turned college football into. You're just saying it how it is.
But every year, when you look at Penn State's schedule, when you look at either Michigan or Ohio State, whenever it's at Penn State, that's a night game. The last 2 seasons, that has not been a night game.
True. They've been day games.
I mean, I'm not saying anything, but we all know weird things happen at night. When games are played at night, anything can happen. And in a stadium full of 107,000 people screaming their head off like you see in our background, it's not an easy place to play football.
I've heard it's one of the hardest places to play.
There's a huge difference between playing in that stadium at noon and then 7 o'clock. And so whatever the scheduling takes, whatever you have to do, if I'm Penn State, I'm really pissed off. Last year we got Ohio State at noon. This year we get Michigan probably at noon. I mean, that can't happen. And their night game is going to end up being Iowa, I think.
I think it is Iowa. They have Iowa. So, yeah. And that's the whiteout, too.
Come on.
And they get West Virginia at 7:30 to open the season. Because that's a big
and
draw. And Michigan State, it's not at home.
And that's what it is. I mean,
I think Ohio State's night game is against Penn State, too, I think.
Nope. It's to be determined right now.
Ohio State's Fox game at night is to be determined, but they got a 7:30 game against Michigan State on November 11th.
That is true. They open the season. Penn State opens the season against West Virginia. Then they play Delaware. And then they go to Champaign to face Illinois. Travel to Des Moines, Iowa. To face the Hawkeyes at night. They host the Hawkeyes at night, and then they travel to Evanston to face the Wildcats, host UMass, travel to Columbus to face the Buckeyes, host the Hoosiers, travel to College Park to face the Terrapins, and then they host Michigan, host the Rutgers, and then they travel to East Lansing to face Sparty, which is a night game.
They play at Ford Field this year. They're playing in Detroit.
Oh, are they?
Yep.
So that's going to be at
Yeah.
Detroit then. So it won't be a true away
So
game. It's going to be a neutral site.
It's
And I
Friday
think
the
it's Thanks-
24th.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's Thanksgiving. It's Friday night.
Yeah.
So
When I'm looking at this schedule, I'm just going to be the first one to say it. Here's my prediction. The top three beat each other up in some way, shape, or form. So I'm taking Penn State 11-1. That's my prediction.
Big Ten championship, 11-1.
Well, see, here's the thing: is the Big Ten. If those three teams beat each other up, they're all in a three-way tie for the Big Ten East, right, or whatever, to go to Indy. So it depends on who is ranked the highest at that time, who goes to Indy
in the CFP.
in the CFP.
So will
Whoever's
that be Penn State?
Probably
I don't
not.
think
Probably
so.
the winner of Ohio State, Michigan.
I don't think
Still.
so. Yep, I think the Buckeyes beat Penn State. Penn State beats Michigan, and then it comes down to Ohio State and Michigan.
I think you just said on live
And
that
then
Michigan was going to beat Ohio State.
Then Michigan maybe also, I don't know how it's all going to play out, but
No,
they beat
I
up
agree.
each
I
other.
think they-
But they beat up on each other is what I'm saying. Penn State beats Ohio
11-1.
State. Michigan
11-1,
beats Penn
wow.
State. Ohio State beats Michigan. I mean, it could happen. I mean, but when I look at their schedule, I don't see, with the talent that they have, I mean, I don't see their toughest games are going to be Ohio State, Michigan. Am I wrong?
I don't like that Iowa game. And I think that could be one. If that wasn't at home at the 7:30 game and likely the whiteout, I might have marked that a question mark. Just because of how much I don't 100% trust James Franklin. But
Okay, well,
cutting
I got
everything else short,
question
I lock
for you
in
on that.
11-1.
a question for that game. Who do you trust more, James Franklin or Ferentz Jr.?
Well, to be fair, the Hawkeyes quarterback and tight end were the last team to go into Penn State at night and win.
Yeah. So you're locking 11-1 too, Ethan?
Unfortunately, I think that's the smart play. If you're betting, you're using simple logic. You see 10 wins and 2 question marks. Who are those 2 question marks? Ohio State and Michigan. So I'm splitting the difference. But I think that Iowa's a trap game, even though it's a home game. So their floor is still 9-3. That could be ugly.
Drew?
Yeah. Obviously, Ohio State and Michigan are the toss-up games. I think at Illinois could be a trap. I think Iowa could be a trap, and I think at Maryland could be a trap.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm gonna have Penn State go 11-1, and I think I'm gonna have them beat Ohio State, lose to Michigan.
You're having them going 11-1?
Yeah.
I'm upset that they bumped the Ohio State game back from Halloween weekend, and I really kind of know what happened with that. Because ever since I can remember,
it's always been Halloween weekend.
That's either been that or Wisconsin, I believe, on Halloween weekend, which it is Wisconsin this year in Camp Randall, so it'll probably be a night game.
Yep. Oh, it will be. It's going to be horrible.
But I don't like that Penn State's not on Halloween weekend. That feels weird to me.
Corey, are you following suit? 11-1, or are you going 10-2? 10-2.
I don't even think 10-2. I think they really should be 6-0 when they go to Columbus. They should be. I think they're going to lose to Iowa. Talk about it. James Franklin at night going to screw it up in front of his home crowd. I also think Maryland, Northwestern, Illinois, one of those games, they're just not going to show up. It always happens every year. They somehow have a game where they just don't play well. They don't show up. in a game that they should win by 30. So it feels like to me that could be another loss there. I mean, I look at their schedule. I mean, I don't even want to say it, but I think Michigan State may catch them at the end of the year. Michigan State somehow always plays Penn State tough. It's a night game on Friday night in East Lansing. It's going to be crazy. It's going to be cold. Anything can happen.
It's in Detroit,
right?
Ford Field.
Well,
they're playing in the dome.
Okay, well, but still, I mean, regardless, it still is going to be at night. It's going to be. It feels like it would be more of a home game for Michigan State, even though Penn State travels well. I mean, I could see them 8-4. I'm going to go 9-3. I feel like you said they're going to beat up on each other. I don't think so. I think Michigan and Ohio State are just better. Penn State has all the talent in the world, but the one thing that they don't have that Michigan and Ohio State have is the championship pedigree coaching wise, which I think makes a big difference in those bigger games. Those teams feel like they have the go-to play when they need to have a play done. They know exactly what they're calling. They know exactly what they're doing. And I mean, Penn State in their biggest games does tend not to stop the run. And if you don't stop the run against Ohio State and Michigan, you're going to get run off the field. So I'm going to go 9-3, and I think they'll finish third in the East.
Yeah, and my thing is interesting you say that. If they do trip up against Iowa at home and then they travel to Evanston the next week, they were a 25-point favorite last year, and they won 17-7 against Northwestern, and that was not a good Northwestern team, and it's about the same point in the year. So do you think they wouldn't show up in Evanston if they get tripped up at home against Iowa? Is that going to be weighing heavy?
It's one of those things. It's James Franklin. It's coaching. I mean, you have to get your team ready to go. I mean, Penn State has all the talent in the world, and like we said, could be a national contender. It feels like in the big games, they either sometimes show up for a quarter, show up for a half, but never can show up for the whole game. I remember a couple of years ago, they had 3 long touchdown runs, I think, against Ohio State, and were up 21-10 at halftime and got the ball out of halftime. And he comes out throwing, he throws a pick 6 on the first possession, something like that. Like just things that shouldn't happen. I just don't know. To me, James Franklin is not the guy, and I just don't trust him in those games. Now, they have all the talent, and like you guys said, 11-1 is definitely possible, even 12-0. But 12-0 requires going literally perfect every single week and hoping that you can do that. And it feels like there are still a little bit of question marks in certain areas for Penn State that aren't question marks for other teams. And we talked about it before. I think Maryland is good. Maryland has talent, and that game is in Maryland, potentially maybe a night game in November. Even if it's a 3:30 game, it's still going to be, there's a lot of teams on their schedule. While they should beat them,
they're trap games.
It's everything. I mean, look, when you're one of the 3 best teams in the conference, every week is a trap game.
Yeah.
Every single week is a trap game, even if it's at home. I hate playing at night. When your team has to play at night, I hate it. You have to wait all day. They wait all day, and then they can either come out on fire, unbelievable, or they can come out awful.
Right.
And if you come out awful against a really good team, you're down 3 touchdowns at halftime.
Or more.
Right.
Or worse.
So it's I just, in those situations, until I see James Franklin do it and win those big games. Now, he has beaten Michigan before.
He struggles
he's beaten Ohio State, but he struggles in Columbus. And for some reason, I don't know why, for some reason, he somehow doesn't tend to beat Michigan when it's in Penn State. So,
and my other question, I guess, also something to think about is, okay, say that they come out on top of the 3-team madness. They go 12-0. Who do you draw from the West that's your biggest problem? Is it Wisconsin because you haven't seen them? I mean, who are you worst? Who's going to be the biggest problem on the other side of the bracket, I guess? that's going to trip you up more come Indianapolis in December.
To me, the
I
most
mean,
Penn State thing would be to go 12-0 and lose at the Big Ten championship game and allow Michigan and Ohio State to probably both go again. That would be the most James Franklin thing ever. That would literally be the most Penn State thing ever. But it's Penn State, no matter what, it feels like whoever wins the East is so far above whoever's coming out of the West. I don't care about Nebraska. Even Wisconsin has a bunch of talent, but nowhere near Penn State, Michigan, or Ohio State. So whoever comes out of the East, it feels like is going to be a 10-point, depending on who it is, at least 10-point favorite in the Big Ten championship game.
I think so too, Corey. Ethan, to answer your question, you'll see that when Ohio State and Wisconsin face off this year.
I think
because that's going to be your who else is
litmus test.
Yeah, I mean that's going to be your test, to see how good the West is. Really, is when you see Wisconsin or Minnesota face it, do their crossover game. Because in my mind, when I'm looking at the Big Ten this year, I have two teams that are in the West that are going to that have their tickets ready to be purchased to go to Indy, and that's Wisconsin or Minnesota. I don't think Matt Rule can turn around what talent Nebraska does have in time to make it to Indy. Iowa doesn't. If they didn't have French Jr. running that freaking offense, I would say Iowa would be in that conversation, but don't trust them. And everybody else is just trash.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going through Big Ten championship games, and
Northwestern,
going back to
Wisconsin,
Ohio State and Wisconsin.
Well, then you had Ohio State in 2013. That was on the other side of the Big Ten, so they were in the Leaders or Legends division, whatever the stupid shit that was. But then after that season, they moved back over, and they did this East and West, and it was Wisconsin,
I'm looking here. The
Penn
East
State
champions.
won.
The East champions been favored by 16.5 5 of the last 6 years.
But I mean, who have they faced? Wisconsin, Purdue,
Iowa,
Northwestern,
Northwestern twice.
Iowa. There's been 4 teams: Wisconsin, Iowa, Purdue.
The gap.
Yeah.
But to win half of your conference and be a 17-point dog at a neutral field feels rough, man. That feels real bad.
I mean, we went up to Indianapolis and we saw Ohio State face Wisconsin 3 years in a row.
That was boring. Especially the year the turf broke. Yes, the turf broke.
Oh, yeah, we were at that, and they had to came out and fix the turf live.
I thought we were going to be there till 4 a.m., dude. That game never felt like it was going to end.
Was that the game we were sitting up high for?
No, we usually sit up high there. But yeah, we were up on the end by the open window side.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean that's what I feel is coming out of the East. So if you're Ohio State, Michigan, or Penn State, win.
Start looking for tickets.
Yeah, start looking for tickets, but win. And you're probably going to be in the playoff.
Don't lose to who you shouldn't lose to.
Exactly.
At all. No Marylands, no Iowas, no Rutgers.
Nope.
Nothing stupid.
No. Well, we're less than a month out for college football season, guys. What's crazy is these next 4 weeks are the last 4 weeks of the calendar year that we don't have football.
Go, just get through them.
God.
Let's just get through these last 4 weeks, guys, and then we have football for the rest of the year. Thanks for coming out this evening. Everybody have a great rest of your evening. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel, like the video, subscribe, and we'll see y'all next week. Peace.
Deuces.